My name is Andy, and I'm 40 years old. I was with my ex, Megan, for 8 years, and we were married for 7 of them. Before we tied the knot, she had already been divorced once, but this was my first time walking down the aisle. To put it simply, I found myself pulling away from her emotionally, though not intentionally. Megan had a way of making me feel like a complete failure, convincing me that I was the one with serious issues when we split up. I have a stable job and earn more money than she does. A few years ago, we did some testing with a counselor, which showed that I had a balanced personality and stable emotions. But recent counseling made me see the real issue. It wasn't me. Megan just wasn't trustworthy. Without trust, emotional intimacy is impossible. No wonder I withdrew emotionally. It was my defense mechanism kicking in. Sure, emotional neglect can hurt, but Megan always acted like she was blameless. She never took a moment to reflect on how her behavior contributed to our problems. Eventually, she confronted me, leading to her asking for a separation, and finally, a divorce. In the 2 months before everything blew up, I knew something was off with her, but she wouldn't admit it. So I kept my head down and carried on with my life. After we separated, I discovered she had been having an affair, at least an emotional one, with a married guy. I confronted her about it in January 2021 and caught her off guard. She tried to lie at first, but I had evidence, and she eventually confessed. Even then, she tried to justify it by saying, "Well, nothing physical happened, so it wasn't really cheating." What a coward. That was the final straw for me. My gut feeling about Megan was confirmed, and I knew she couldn't be trusted. In the past, she had broken my trust in many small ways. Any married person knows those little things add up over time. I would tell her something in confidence, or we would discuss matters meant to stay between us, and she would go and share them with others. This was not just a one-time mistake, it was a pattern. As for me, I was drinking too much and smoking pot, but I always kept my job and ensured we were financially stable. I was good at my job, and we never fought about money, but my drinking made me difficult to be around. I stopped drinking and smoking pot in December, and have been sober since then. Hallelujah for that. A few years ago, Megan's sister Amanda was having an affair behind her husband's back. A poor guy who let everyone walk all over him. I always felt like her family tried to mold me into a compliant little house pet like him, but I never let them. Her sister confided in Megan about her affair, as if it was no big deal, but Megan was absolutely furious. She was livid that night and turned to me, asking what she should do. We talked for hours about infidelity and its different forms. I remember telling her that emotional affairs were just as much adultery as physical ones, and that any form of cheating was grounds for divorce. Once trust is broken, it cannot be repaired. I made it clear that I could never trust a woman who betrayed me that way, and I meant every word. If she did not know my stance before, she sure knew it after that conversation. Fast forward to fall. 2020. Megan started feeling neglected, and this married guy gave her the validation she craved. But looking back, I realized Megan was always terrible at keeping secrets, and even worse at lying. She would act all high and mighty, claiming that even small white lies were wrong. But I think she only did that because she was so bad at lying. If something was bothering Megan, I could always tell. Conversations with her would go like this. "Hey, what is wrong, Megan?" "Nothing." "Come on, I can tell. Are you going to make this like pulling teeth, or are you just going to tell me now? You know I will eventually figure it out." I was never wrong when I sensed something was up. Not once. At some point, Megan crossed the line into emotional affair territory, or maybe even a physical one. She knew she could not keep it hidden from me forever, because I would eventually figure it out. Even if she wanted to come clean and fix our marriage, she would remember that conversation we had years ago. She knew my stance on cheating was solid, so she only had a few choices. She had a few choices. She could come clean and hope I could handle the truth and work through it with her. But Megan knew that was unlikely, since I had made my position crystal clear. She could confess and face divorce, but that would ruin her reputation. She could hide it and either keep the affair going while staying married, or break it off, but keep lying. This would be tricky since she was terrible at keeping secrets and lying without slipping up. Or she could beat me to the punch by filing for separation and making it look like she was the victim while gaslighting me. She could make me carry the blame for our marriage failing, all while walking away as the innocent one and keeping her facade intact. So Megan chose the last option, but she did not realize that I was not a fool. I was slow to catch on, mainly because I was in denial. But when I asked her directly in December if she had cheated, her face gave it away. I did not dig further until January because I was busy moving out and figuring out my next steps. Her attempt to twist things was downright despicable, and in many ways, worse than the infidelity itself. They say the cover-up is often worse than the crime, and boy, were they right. Adjustment and healing. From December until the end of February, I stayed with my parents, who lived about an hour away. My birthday is in December, and then there was Christmas. Needless to say, this was the worst birthday and Christmas of my life. Turning 40 is supposed to be a big celebration. A lot of people struggle with hitting the big 40, and for me, it was even harder because of everything that was happening. I could hardly eat during most of December. Toward the end of the month, my appetite slowly started coming back, but when I discovered the affair, I lost it all over again. I managed to supplement my diet with high-protein shakes and hit the gym every morning before work. I pushed through that struggle, though it was not easy. Thankfully, I work from home, so I did not have to worry about commuting. December tends to be a slow month for my job, which was perfect since my concentration was shot. When things picked up again in January, it was tough to focus, but I got slightly better over time. Still, it was the worst thing anyone had ever done to me, and the worst thing I had ever been through. I started seeing a counselor in early December and continued up to the end of May. I went through 3 different counselors. I cannot stress this enough. People, go to counseling. Seriously, it will help you. If the first person you see does not help, move on to someone else. But whatever you do, talk to someone to maintain your mental health. The first counselor was helpful until he was not. Once I realized there was nothing more to gain from him, I moved on. Each of them offered something unique to my healing process. Despite the affair, I decided to do everything in my power to save the marriage. I guess I am just loyal and value commitment. It did not work out in the end, but at least I can say I did everything I could. I did not date until after the divorce was finalized. For me, stooping to Megan's level was out of the question. I was not going to respond to infidelity with infidelity. I wore my ring until the very last day, as painful as it was. For those who are atheist or agnostic, I am not looking to debate philosophy or theology, so feel free to skip this part. Just know that you are entitled to your beliefs, and so am I. The thing that helped me the most was God, without a doubt. I did not have the mental strength to push through this storm on my own, but somehow He provided, even though at times it did not feel like it. A few years back, I bought a short book called 3 Easy Steps to Emotional Healing. I cannot remember why I bought it, but I had never read it before. One night in late January or early February, I remembered that I had packed it with a few things I had not put into storage. I broke it out and read it all in one sitting. I asked my parents to help me follow the steps outlined in the book. It was incredibly painful to go through those steps, but I cannot articulate the healing I received. It felt like a miracle. Just like the pain of having a bullet dug out of your body, it hurt. And there were many, many bullets, but we dug them out one by one, and the Lord took each one and healed the wounds. I probably received as much healing in an hour and a half as most people would get in a year or more. It might have been the single best thing I did for myself, and one of the greatest things God has done for me in my life. In late February, I decided to return to the city where I had lived during my marriage. The thought of going back was daunting. With my job being remote, I had the freedom to live anywhere with a stable internet connection. However, the idea of being alone and losing the emotional support I had been leaning on for the past few months was terrifying. I was worried about living in a place filled with memories of Megan and our life together. Would I break down every time I passed a familiar spot? There were so many places tied to our past, but I resolved not to let Megan or this entire ordeal drive me away from a city I loved. It would only become a place of sorrow if I allowed it to be. I knew I had to face it head on. If I avoided it, the city would always hold a painful grip on me. Divorce support. Following the advice of friends, I joined a faith-based divorce support group called Divorce Care. The woman who led the group was kind but talked a lot. On my first and only night there, the group consisted of 5 people: the leader and her husband, myself, a woman with kids going through a divorce, and a man with kids also dealing with a divorce. Luckily, I have no kids, which would have made this whole situation even more complicated. I won't criticize the program because many people found it incredibly helpful, and I'm glad they did, but it wasn't for me. And here's why. I walked out feeling worse than when I walked in. From the start, they told us that the next 6 months to a year of our lives would be sheer hell. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the essence of it. I don't appreciate that kind of negativity being predicted over my life. As the Bible says, life and death are in the power of the tongue. I had fought too hard for my mental health with God's help to let it all unravel because of some people I didn't even know who were supposed to be helping me. Yes, things were tough, and I knew I'd still be dealing with some things for a while. It's not that I was in denial, but I had a choice to make. I could either wallow in sadness and misery for the next 6 to 12 months, or even longer, or I could choose to fight and move on. I'm not saying you can skip grieving and those negative emotions. You can't. You'll feel that pain, but you can choose whether or not it will control your life. You can stay stuck in the mud or push through it to reach the other side. I decided I wasn't going to stay stuck or let anyone else make me feel that way. To be clear, that didn't mean I buried my feelings. I didn't. I let myself feel everything and cry when I needed to, and sometimes I still do, but I'm moving forward. Moving on and dating again. When to start dating again is a personal choice. For me, the right time is different for everyone. As I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't date until the divorce was final, and I had moral reasons for that. But even without my moral compass, I still wasn't ready to date before it was finalized because I was an emotional wreck. My self-confidence was shattered. Being cheated on really does a number on you. It can crush your spirit. The one person you're supposed to trust the most betrays you in the worst way possible. If there's one thing we all agree on in marriage, it's faithfulness. It's the one thing you don't break, but Megan did. I had my chances to cheat and could have justified it to myself, but I never would have done that and never did. So yes, I can say I'm a better person than she is. Ultimately, she did me a favor by freeing me from a marriage with someone I couldn't trust. She stole 8 years of my life. Why should I let another 8, 10, 20, or 30 be stolen? The divorce was finalized in early March of 2021. I had only been in my new place for a week or two. Even though we were legally done, there were still loose ends to tie up, like health insurance, taxes, and a shared bank account. I had opened my own account earlier, but we still had one with both our names to handle mutual bills and taxes. Some folks told me I should wait 6 months to a year before dating again. Funny how most of those people had never gone through a divorce, much less one involving infidelity. It's like they read enough blog posts and think they know it all. Others said the sooner I get back on the horse, the better. I listened to both sides but knew that advice is a case-by-case thing. It really depends on the person. There's no one-size-fits-all rule of thumb. Ultimately, I decided to follow my own instincts rather than listen to others. Why should I punish myself for something I didn't do? I wasn't the one who cheated, so I didn't see why I should put myself on hold to make others comfortable. I was honest enough to recognize if I wasn't ready. Back in January, I knew I wasn't ready, and even thought about dating despite my own moral reservations. I'm 40 years old and know what I want. I don't need to find myself. The woman I thought I married turned out to be a stranger, so I decided to find someone who truly matched what I was looking for. Time is precious, and I didn't want to waste any more of it. Within a week of the divorce being finalized, I signed up for several dating sites. Soon I was texting multiple women and had my first date within 2 weeks, followed quickly by another. The second date was with an incredible woman. Gorgeous, with a fantastic personality, and we really clicked. At this point, I was juggling conversations with 10 or 12 women. It took me about a week to regain my confidence, especially since I hadn't dated in years. I went on a date with a third woman while continuing to manage other conversations over text and phone. That third woman and I are now exclusive and just celebrated our 2-month anniversary. She's amazing. When I first started dating, I assumed many women wouldn't want to go out with me so soon after the divorce. I figured it was likely, but I told myself, let's find out. Boy, was I surprised. They had questions, as they should have, and I was honest about everything. I laid it all out, admitting where I had gone wrong in the relationship. Sure, I made mistakes, but I learned from them. As it turned out, the fact that I'd been in counseling the whole time and was still going seemed to be a big plus for them. I can't count how many times I heard, "It's great that you're in counseling. Most guys wouldn't do that, and wow, you're really resilient. It says a lot about you that you're doing so well." You're obviously very strong." I heard these comments both during in-person dates and over messages. It didn't hurt that Megan and I had been separated for several months before the divorce was finalized. Yes, the divorce wasn't official until March, but we'd been apart long before that. I was able to say I'd been faithful to the end and hadn't started dating until everything was final. This gave me credibility with the women I met, even though my ex had acted classlessly. I didn't use her actions as an excuse to stoop to her level. I kept it classy throughout, despite the awful betrayal I'd experienced. Out of the many women I met, only one didn't want to date me because I was fresh out of a divorce. It wasn't personal. She'd been used as a rebound too many times before, so she was understandably cautious. I have to say, those dates and interactions were the best I'd ever had in my life. Maybe it's because I'd matured since my early 30s, but I felt more confident on those dates. I'm still not sure why or how, considering what had happened, but I have a theory. The worst thing that could happen in a relationship had already happened to me, so what did I have to fear? I'd already lived through it, and I was still standing. I was sitting at a restaurant, having dinner with a stunning woman who was practically undressing me with her eyes. So why shouldn't I be confident? To this day, it's still unbelievable to me that the woman I thought was the love of my life cheated on me. You'd expect me to be curled up in a fetal position, disgusted with myself and wanting to die. Not that I hadn't felt that way at some point before, but I was proving to myself that Megan's betrayal doesn't define who I am or what I'm worth. No one does, except for me and God. She only influences my life to the degree that I let her, and I'm not letting her. No way. So if any of you are worried that no one will date you soon after a divorce, don't be so sure. But make sure you go to counseling, process your feelings, and do the work to heal. And it is work, no doubt about it. But it pays off. I'm not 100% healed even now. Some things just take time. But expecting to be fully healed at this point would be unrealistic. I give credit to God, myself, and my support system of family and close friends. I leaned on God and put in the work to speed up my healing. I wasn't passive. I didn't just sit around waiting to feel better. I took action to improve my well-being. Taking control. One of my closest friends is an attorney. I never fully appreciated it before, but attorneys are skilled in much more than just legal matters. They understand human behavior, psychology, and negotiation tactics. My friend had experienced a situation eerily similar to mine. The only difference was that he and his partner weren't married. Everything else was the same. They were together for 8 years. He withdrew emotionally, and then she cheated. One day, we were out fishing on the lake, something we did often, and spent several hours discussing my situation. He mentioned something intriguing. Despite Megan being the one to file for divorce, she would eventually reach out to me again, and not just for necessary reasons. I laughed it off, thinking, she wanted a divorce and has clearly moved on with someone else. He also advised that I should stop communicating with her directly. Instead, he suggested setting up an intermediary. If she needed to contact me, she'd go through the intermediary, who would then relay her message to me and pass my response back to her. He offered to be my intermediary, and the first step was informing Megan about the new arrangement. I didn't want her to know my address, but there were still some items I needed from when I moved out, plus I needed a copy of our tax return once it was filed. We had filed jointly for 2020, so she was instructed to send everything to my parents' address, and they would forward it to me. After that, she started making what appeared to be kind gestures. There could be several motives behind this. First, she wants to believe she could have me back, just for her ego. Second, she genuinely wants to test the waters because she's feeling the loss and wants to repair the relationship. Third, she's embarrassed about being the cheater and wants to change how my family, friends, and our mutual connections view her. Fourth, my sudden refusal to communicate directly threw her off, and not being able to reach me whenever she wanted is messing with her head. Regardless of her motives, maintaining this boundary was healthier for me, and that's all I cared about. It also strengthened my current relationship because my girlfriend knew I wasn't talking to my ex anymore. Managing communication. Before the divorce was finalized, I had wanted to take our 2 male cats with me. We had 3 cats, 2 males and 1 female. The males were closer to me, while the female adored Megan. Initially, she resisted my request to take the males, So I decided to let her have them and detach myself emotionally from them when I moved out in December. Later on, Megan emailed my lawyer friend out of the blue, offering me the two male cats, claiming she couldn't give them the attention they deserved because she wasn't home enough. But her logic was flawed. The two males are inseparable and entertain each other all the time. If any of the cats weren't getting attention, it was the female, who pretty much despises the other two and only loves Megan. I would have loved to take my two boys, but I considered the potential issues. First, my girlfriend is allergic to cats. Second, I didn't want to give my ex a reason to contact me in the future. Plus, I didn't want reminders of my past life roaming around my new one. My lawyer friend emailed her back, saying I wasn't interested. A couple of weeks later, she emailed him with the login details for some frequent flyer miles I'd forgotten about and never requested. A few weeks after that, she emailed me directly instead of going through him, saying she wanted to send me the taxes I'd asked for. She mentioned that although I'd requested she send everything to my parents' address, some other mail had come for me. If I just gave her my address, she'd mail it all directly to me. Just send it all to my parents like I asked. I didn't want her knowing where I lived, showing up at my door, or leaving the cats there. My lawyer friend replied and reiterated that she should send anything meant for me to my parents' address. She also suggested I set up mail forwarding, but that request should have gone to my lawyer friend, not me. On social media, my ex and I haven't been connected since late November, though she remained connected to my family and friends long after the divorce. And despite everything, she kept photos of us together, including our wedding pictures, on her profile. Update 1. Out of nowhere, the pain started to fade. This feeling emerged last week, and I was initially skeptical. I had experienced this before, but it usually only lasted a day or two. I kept telling myself, let's see how long this lasts before getting too excited. But it has been nearly a week now, and the hurt just doesn't hit the same way. I still think Megan is awful, but it bothers me a lot less. The same thoughts cross my mind, but now it's more like, meh. I don't think this has anything to do with my girlfriend. I knew she was a better woman from our very first date, and she has only proven that since. We've been together for almost 4 months now. She's more attractive, smarter, more emotionally mature, and a better lover. Even knowing this, the past used to sting, but now it hasn't for many days. I am genuinely happy, and I hope someone out there finds comfort in knowing that it is possible to feel better. Maybe it just takes time. Update 2. For months, I've been contemplating exposing my ex-wife to her parents. Some of you encouraged it, while others advised against it. I've decided to go ahead with it. I haven't taken any action against her so far, and some people think telling her parents would be vengeful. To that, I say, if I truly wanted revenge, I'd do a lot more than just tell her parents. For me, my silence feels like I'm covering up her betrayal. Not just against me, but against everyone who supported our marriage, including her parents. Megan fabricated a story about why we divorced, blaming me for everything. I'm not letting that stand. It's been almost 7 months since the divorce was finalized, and I feel like waiting this long has given me enough time to communicate the truth without being driven purely by revenge. I started dating a new woman 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, and I'm still with her. She's okay with me exposing Megan to her parents, so no issues there. For those concerned, I'm not attaching my feelings to the outcome of how her family will react. I don't care what they think of the truth after I share it with them. I just want them to know what really happened. If anyone doubts me, I recorded the phone conversation where Megan admitted to the emotional affair. I couldn't prove a physical affair, but there's enough circumstantial evidence to suggest it. Either way, her infidelity was significant enough to end our marriage, and the other guy's marriage too. I'll include this phone recording when I send the message to her parents, and yes, the recording was legal. I might face some backlash, but I'm not scared and don't care. They can't do anything worse to me than what she already did. If anything, she should worry that I might share the truth more widely. I don't plan to do that, but if any of them cause trouble, they may regret it. I'll update you after I go through with it. I know some of you are curious about whether you should expose your unfaithful spouse. I asked people in this community if they felt better or worse after outing their spouse, and the responses were mixed. Those who regretted it had expectations tied to the reactions of others. I won't make that mistake. I'll share what happens afterward. I'm not sure when I'm going to do it, but it will be soon, My attorney friend suggests sending a physical letter, so I'll probably take his advice. Update 3. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. I never told her parents what she did, allowing her to smear my name and blame me for everything. She has no idea that I recorded the phone call where she confessed to the emotional affair. She doesn't know that I have the call and text logs organized in a spreadsheet with graphs detailing her betrayal. She's unaware that I presented everything in an easy-to-understand format or that there's circumstantial evidence pointing to a physical affair. Her parents might believe it, or they might lie to themselves, and that's fine. I can't control their response, but deep down, they'll know. Even if they deny it, they'll know. This isn't about revenge, it's about revealing the truth. What they do with that truth is up to them. Actions have consequences, and one of those consequences is that people learn what you did. I'm not obligated to stay silent or cover this up. I feel like I've found the last bit of closure just by preparing everything to send and knowing that I'm going to do it soon. Unless God himself tells me otherwise, the mail is going out.